Tapping into virtues is the name of this channel. The virtue we're going to pick on is peace. We're going to go from a space of grief to peace. My name is Shamina. First we're going to connecting up, 150 meters up, 300 meters up. Imagine like we are plugging ourselves into a socket of energy up above us, like plugging into an electrical socket, bringing the energy down like waterfall, straight through our bodies with no judgment. Love is light in whatever abode it dwelleth. And so bringing the energy down, straight down to our feet, into the center of the earth where we see, sense, or feel a ball of energy, plugging into that energy, the same energy, source energy, bringing it straight back up to our hearts, both energy, one energy, shining it around ourselves like a lighthouse and pushing it out. That we are spiritual beings in a body, we have no edges. And so grief, we're going to focus on grief today and tapping that into peace. And there are many versions of grief, so please be gentle with yourselves. So we're going to find a space in the body where this grief is sitting. For some people it will be behind their hearts, in their stomachs, in their gut, in their throat, in their sinuses. So I would ask you to, on a scale of 0 to 10, where this grief is sitting at, just pick a number, no judgment. 10 meaning the highest form of grief, and so our purpose would be to bring it down from a 10 to a 0 or to a lower, as we feel comfortable enough to hold this space. And if we don't bring it down to a complete 0, that's just where we choose to be at this moment in time. We can always come back to the video and start tapping again when we're ready to bring it down to a space of peace. So, taking into consideration that when needing of physical care, please go see a healthcare provider. Even though I have this grief, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I have this grief, sitting wherever it's sitting in your body, even though I have this grief, I deeply and completely accept myself. This grief. I have this grief. This grief. I have this grief. This grief. I have this grief, this pain, this hurt. I have this grief, this pain, this hurt, this unfairness, this injustice. I have this grief. I have this grief sitting in my body. I have this grief. I have this grief. It's causing me so much pain. I have this grief. I have this grief. It's causing me so much pain. I'm so blocked. I can't breathe. I can't speak clearly. I can't sing clearly. I have this grief. I have this grief and it hurts. I have this grief and I don't know what to do with it. I have this grief and it's just sitting there refusing to budge. Take a comfortable breath. See where you're at on a scale of 0 to 10 with regards to this grief. So even though I have this grief, even though I have this grief, even though I have this grief sitting, wherever it's sitting in my body, I deeply and completely accept myself. I am willing to let go of this grief. I am willing to let go of this grief. I have this grief sitting in me, and I am willing to let it go. The only person it seems to be hurting is me, and I have this grief sitting in my body. The only person it's causing any repercussions to is myself, because I am the one who is blocked, stuck, having difficulty breathing, and cannot voice my truth. I have this grief. Even though I have this grief, I'm willing to let it go. this grief. I have this grief. And I'm okay with that. Obviously, I need to sit in this grief for a little while because that's what makes me feel safe. And I'm okay with that. If I need to sit in this grief because that's what I feel is safe for me at this moment in time, then that's okay. If I need to sit in this grief because that's how I need to honor the situation I am in right now, then I'm okay with that. I give my body permission to sit in this grief, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that body. I'm okay with that. Taking a comfortable breath. If you need to repeat the first stages of this video again, please repeat it. Now we're going to come to talking through the grief. Talking to the grief towards peace. Even though I have this grief. Even though I have this grief sitting in my body. Even though I have this grief sitting in my throat, sitting in my sinuses, I deeply and completely accept myself. I have this grief and I'm willing to let it go. I have this grief and I'm willing to let it go. I have this grief and I'm willing to let it go. I have this grief and I'm willing to let it go. I have this grief and I'm willing to let it go. The only reason I'm willing to let it go is because I would like to be at peace with my grief. I would like to be at peace with my grief. I would like to be at peace with my grief. I would like to be at peace with my grief. I am a spiritual being in a body, and I am not responsible for anyone else's choices, words, deeds, or actions. I only have responsibility for my choices, my words, my deeds, and my actions in every one moment to move my life forward as a spiritual being in a body, having a mortal pilgrimage. And so I give myself permission to let go of this grief. That I can only do the best I can every single day in words, deeds, actions. And take account for where I am at every single day as a spiritual being. I cannot take accountability for someone else's choices, actions, words, or deeds. Because I am not them and they are not me. I can only take accountability for myself. And so this grief that I hold in my body, this grief that I hold in my body of would have, could have, and should have. Would have, could have, and should have are wonderful things that we always look back in retrospect and wish we could have done, should have done, and would have done differently. But the point is that we only get one opportunity each time to do each thing. And so wherever we were at that time was the best that we were doing. And this is not giving anybody permission to hurt anyone else. We're not allowed to do that. And if we're hurting people, we should stop. Taking a breath. My grief is mine. I take responsibility for my grief. Only I can feel what I choose to feel. So my grief is mine. My grief that I hold in my body is mine. And I take responsibility for that. I can only be the best version of I am in every one moment. But I cannot change the past. I can't change the present. So I take responsibility for my grief. I take the responsibility for honoring myself for my grief. And I give my grief permission to just let go. I give my grief permission to just let go. It's okay to let it go. I can't change the other person. The only person I have power to change is myself. And yes, there is grief. But But the grief is in the fact that what if we don't change ourselves? That is the greatest grief. Because the potentialities and the possibilities lie in us changing ourselves, not in the other person. I can only be the light I want to see. And so I give myself permission to move this grief. Taking a breath, looking at your intensity wherever it was at in terms of grief, if it has come down. If you have some water to drink, drink some water. Some herbal tea. I choose peace. I choose to be at peace with myself. I choose peace. But I am safe. I am well. And that is safe for me. To let go of this grief and to be in a state of peace. It is safe for me to let go of this grief and to be in a state of peace. I can only do the best I possibly can at this moment in time, based on where I'm at. And I'm okay with letting go of this grief. Because that's all I have, is a choice. In every one moment there is only choice, and I choose. I choose to let go of this grief, to be in a state of peace. It's not as hard as it looks. It's just a state of being. A state of being at peace with myself. That all things happen when they're supposed to happen, and we do the best we can. We make choices, we take actions, and we move ourselves forward. So I choose peace. I choose peace. I choose peace for myself. I choose to be in a state of peace, that it's okay. And I am so grateful for this bounty and grace, my body, for being able to shift into this state of peace for my own well-being. Thank you. And so if you need necessary, please stop and repeat the video until you bring your intensity level down to 0. There are many, many different layers to grief, and this is just a beginning video as to how we can tap from grief into peace. The process requires a bit of effort, so please put in the effort for yourself, and you got this for yourself.